All right, guys, today is the day. You normally don't see my driveway that clean. We have war paint out here. We got cars scattered all over the neighborhood, and it's time. We're gonna get this old gal on this new frame. Now, if you guys remember in other videos, you saw me build this frame right here on this garage floor. Custom motor mounts, completely custom frame, loosely based off the original frame. I built the axles, a Super Duty Dana 60 in the front, and a 14 bolt in the rear, shaved them trusses, the whole deal, and bolted on a set of 43s mounted on some race lines. So now it's time to take that disaster of a tub and actually get it set on this frame and see what kind of chopping and stripping and welding and fire and who else knows what we need. Yeah, it's crazy. First time it's seen daylight. After a little help with some friends and family, my daughter at the camera, we have a body that's sitting on a frame. There you have it, guys. It's finally in the garage. Let's do a quick recap on what went on with the rig to get it to this point before I get started and show you what's next. A long time ago, this rig sat in my garage pretty much in its current state, but it was a little bit different. This rig is a 1978 CJ5. Well, at least at this point, the tub still is. Originally, it had the original frame underneath it with a Chevy 350 and a turbo 350 transmission. Someone else had swapped out the axles to an older 14-bolt rear with drum brakes. I swapped that out for the newer style corporate 14-bolt, and they had a 10-bolt, I believe, in the front. Now those axles are long gone, that frame is long gone. And if you watch those other earlier videos, I made this frame loosely based on the original. I did make it a little bit wider and I made the front curve up just slightly more. That caused me to actually have to chop 3 inches out of the grill, mounting that lower, because the hood sits directly on top. And in order for the hood to follow the right body line over to where it meets on the tub, this had to be shorter in order for the frame to rise and maintain those angles. Now that old 350, that would have been a really cool motor, but the block was junked, the heads were junked, the whole thing was cracked, it was just bad news, and I got rid of it. I now have an LS1 in here. It's just a 4.8, but with a cam and some other stuff going on, a nice tune. It'll be plenty for this rig. It's got a Super Duty 60 in the front, and as I mentioned a minute ago, that 14 bolt in the rear, all topped off with Artec Industries. Now I know what you're thinking, Artec Industries doesn't make any trusses for a CJ5 with 1-tons, right? A 1-ton swap into a CJ5. But what they do make are a bunch of builder style brackets, or brackets that you can take from something else like a TJ and adapt them to this to make it work. And that's exactly what I did. The 4-link suspension that I put in this front and rear double triangulated is basically a TJ bracket setup that I had to modify a little bit. And then I made my own links out of 2-inch DOM with 1.25-inch Heims. And guys, after rebuilding that turbo 350 transmission here in the garage, it basically sits the way you see it now. Now the plan moving forward is gonna be to chop this body and stretch it. I've talked about that in a number of different videos on Instagram, the whole deal, but I've never actually had it in front of me to actually explain what I'm gonna do. In here, I'm basically gonna cut straight down through the rocker, all the way across through the floor and over the transmission tunnel, and then add 4 inches of material in there, giving me a little bit bigger leg room because these CJ5s are tiny. Then once that's done, I have the tub back here, and it's also tiny. So in order to stretch the tub, there's a couple of ways that you can do this. A lot of people like to remove the inner fenders with a plasma cutter or a grinder, and then they basically cut through the side of the tub, cut the floor, stretch it, and re-weld it back together. but I think that's a lot of welding, and I'm gonna try to avoid that. What I'm just gonna do is basically put a straight edge all the way across and just cut it, even through the fenders. And because all of this steel is relatively flat, I'm just gonna basically put a strip of metal in there so that I can finish it. That's gonna determine how much rear stretch this gets. At a minimum, it's gonna be 4 inches, might wind up being closer to 6. We'll have to see. I wanna keep the dimensions of the Jeep correct so that it doesn't look like a pickup truck or a scrambler. I like the fact that the CJ5 has this unique door frame shape, and stretching this bottom section 4 inches will allow me to keep that shape. So everyone's still gonna know it's a CJ5. There'll be no mistaking it for a CJ7 or a YJ. It's gonna be really cool. But before we get to all that stuff, because I'm not using any of this electrical again, I'm just gonna basically snip it all off where I can, clean it up a little bit, and then find the nuts and bolts to basically take it all out. With most of that wiring chopped away from the firewall, it's time to basically move to the interior of this rig. There's not a whole lot to these old Jeeps. All right, well, these are supposed to have at least 4 bolts holding them in, and this particular one only has 3, so they're barely tight. It's also a step in the right direction. That's how you know. That's how you know the people building this Jeep came to party. So with the steering column out of there and the seats tossed in the back, it's now time to actually cut out the entire dash. These CJ5 dashes were extremely basic. People didn't really use these like they use Jeeps today, or even since they introduced the Wrangler. These weren't even called that. Kind of cool. But these Jeeps were made to be serviced and bolted together. They were very simple. Now there's a series of Torx head bolts all the way around this dash panel, and basically loosening them allows the whole thing to come out. But remember, whoever had this before me, somebody along its history decided to do a pretty terrible bedliner paint job. So not only does the bedliner not want to allow those bolts to turn, they also filled where the Torx bit head actually goes into the bolt. So slightly used CJ Dash, I know what I got. Perhaps the coolest thing about this CJ Dash is being able to finally open the glove box. This you couldn't open because of the roll cage, and it was bedlined shut, but the cardboard, that's right, these were made out of cardboard back in the day, is actually still in pretty good shape. It tells me I only got 78,873 miles on this turd. But let's open up that glove box. Let's see what's in there. Looks like maybe for like a safari top, like snaps or something. It's interesting. And a really old metal tin of emergency underpants. Always ready to use. Like I said, guys, whoever owned this Jeep in the past was ready to party. So y'all get the point. Basically ripping everything out of this turd, all right? I gotta go in there, I still gotta remove the heater box assembly and the fan and the ductwork and all that kind of stuff. Rip out any remaining wire. Get the point, and I feel like we're beating a dead Toyota here. So I'm gonna move on. I'm gonna let you guys get back to your day or night, whatever it is that you're doing, and I thank you for the support. Make sure you share this video with your friends and stay tuned, because after this is cleaned out, I'm gonna show you guys how to strip the body of bedliner, and then we get to the fun stuff of doing some chopping, doing some stretching, starting to make this thing into a race car. So guys, get out there, make sure you build something.